welcome to Q Stories. How are you doing today?
I'm fine. I'm Jim Garvey. Nice to meet you.
I'm Erin Smith. Nice to meet you. I'm a local comic book writer, former board member of the LGBT Center board.
Yes, yes.
And you're a current board member.
Correct.
Awesome.
Correct.
Wonderful. Well, let's get started. You want to go first?
I will. For you, at what age did you come out and what was your reasoning? Why did you come out?
I came out at 18. The reason being I met somebody and it kind of inspired me, gave me a little bit of an incentive to come out because it was quite frightening. But I think some of us, when we meet that right person, it kind of gives us that little spark and an edge to come out. I ask you, what year did you come out?
I came out in 1987. I was married, had a child, and was going through the process of realizing who I truly was, and came out in 1987.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah.
When you came out, at the point you came out to your family, did they know, or was it a complete shock to them?
It was pretty much, they didn't know at the time, but they were fully very supportive. Even my former spouse, she's very supportive and has been. We have a child together, so yes, it was a positive experience. Yes.
Oh, that's wonderful.
And with you, would you have come out earlier, if you could, or would it have been an opportunity?
To be honest, I can confidently say no. It just, I think we all have that almost like a denial at some point. And for me, it was a denial for a long time. So coming out, I mean, at times I wish I would have come out at a younger age, but it just, to me personally, it wasn't even an option, you know? It's one of them things.
Yes.
So, this is kind of an odd one. Do you feel that coming out would have been easier if there was more positive representation in media at the time?
I believe so. I think part of the issue during that time frame was the height of the AIDS epidemic, and so any process of coming out was difficult for a lot of people just because of that. But it also instilled in me the fact that I needed to be very public about what was going on, and I needed to be out there fighting for our community. So it had a negative in terms of what it was doing with the entire community because of that, but also it inspired me to be very vocal about things.
Okay.
So when you were coming out, what do you feel was your biggest obstacle in the coming out process?
Myself. And it's sad to say it's, for a lot of us, it's ourselves. Mm-hmm. You know, it's no one else. It's just that, like I said, that denial that you have inside that many of us face. We can be our own worst enemy. And I was diagnosed with anxiety, and that's where it began. Mm-hmm. the domino effect. So, and still to this day, anxiety is a hard thing to navigate, so it's always a second guessing, but makes me a good strategic planner. But yeah, I would say myself.
Okay.
I'm actually kind of glad you touched on the AIDS subject, because one of my questions here was, how did you navigate coming out through AIDS? Because that was a huge crisis.
It was a very difficult process in that the assumption was made by everyone out there that if you were gay, then you were HIV positive. Okay. And that was the navigation we had to do. You had to be very careful who you told, you had to be very careful of what you did, because the automatic assumption was that if you were gay, you were HIV positive. So it was a very, very fine line to walk. Being an advocate, helping, volunteering to help people with HIV, mm-hmm. But then you had the other side of it where it could cause you a lot of problems in your personal life. So it was a very, very difficult thing to navigate at the time.
I couldn't imagine.
Yeah, it was a tough one at the time. So, yeah. Who was the most difficult person to come out to in your relationships?
Can I make this all about me?
Sure.
Me. I would say the first person would be myself, because I knew, but then finally I'm like, okay, so I'm going to have to come out to myself, which is, I've never really thought about that. Thank you for for asking that question, because it was me at first, and then next would be my mom. And it's crazy because my uncle's gay, so he really opened that door. My entire family, both sides, have LGBT family members. Mm-hmm. So you would think that I would have no issue coming out, but I was just scared because me and my mom are very close. I was just afraid of her reaction. Mm-hmm. So I remember we were sitting in the drive-thru at McDonald's, and she said, "Is there ketchup in the bag?" I said, "I'm gay." She said, "Okay. Is there ketchup in the bag? Because I need ketchup." So it was so easy. And then I immediately said, "I don't want you to look at me any different," because my mom and my uncle have always teased each other. And I just thought, is she going to tease me? You know, are things going to be the same? And she just kept giving me this look during the night when we were watching TV. And I'm like, oh my God, stop looking at me like that. It just made it so awkward. But coming out to her, I think, was a struggle. But then it was just so natural for us to move on with life. It wasn't even a big deal.
Those kind of stories are always can be fun. I have one of my own like that. I was walking through a Kroger with my mom and my cousin, and my cousin kind of elbowed me a little bit and said, "He's kind of cute, isn't he, Jim?" And I went, "What? Okay, what?" And we got back to the house, and my cousin left, and I said to my mom, "Mom, did you tell that I was gay?" She said, "Oh, I told the whole family." I said, "Do you think you could have told me that you told the whole family?" But she didn't have any problem with it. It was one of those things that she just did. She didn't have a problem with it at all. So it's along those same lines.
Bless her. She said, "You know what? Everybody knows now. Ain't no secrets."
Yes, exactly. Exactly.
So, what is the greatest positive change you've seen within the LGBT community?
Well, I think we've made major strides in the community and dealing with the AIDS crisis when it is still going on. We've made a lot of strides. My concern and my fear, quite frankly, is that we also, over the last 6-7 years, have taken a lot of steps backwards. And that concerns me tremendously, because I think that the younger generations, while we were dealing with the AIDS crisis, they're dealing with some political and environmental things that can be as much or more caustic than what we dealt with back in the day. So we have to be positive, we have to make strides, we have to make sure that we're out there doing what we need to do and advocating, and making sure that, that 18-year-old kid knows it's okay and he's going to be or she's going to be okay.
Yeah.
So, yeah. If you were to come out today, what would you do differently than you did back then, other than the ketchup story, which is wonderful?
Oh my goodness. To be honest, I feel like if I were to come out today, I don't even know if it would be a coming out. I might just be I've always been told that I've just been myself. Mm-hmm. I try not to act any other way. So I kind of wonder if I were still 18, I know I look it, but if I were still 18, that probably it would just, I'd probably bring a guy home, which was that was my original plan, was just to bring a guy home and act like that was the thing. So, to answer your question, I don't even know if there would be a coming out, or if I just continue, just progressing as I am. Okay. Have you felt any discrimination in your lifetime?
No, actually, I don't believe I felt a significant amount. I have had some threatening situations. I was living down in the Oregon district when I was first going through the coming out process, and I had a few people, as I'm walking down the street, my office was downtown, so I walked, and had a few people, at least one time, and it probably was twice, someone screaming at me, "You faggot, you this, you that." So there was a little tough. It wasn't from, the family standpoint, it was not an issue at all, but there was just the normal things that you see out on the streets these days. So it was a tough process from that standpoint, yes.
Right.
Yeah, so, it was difficult. And that actually goes back to one of the things we said before, with the political environment today. How do you respond to these events? What do you personally do, or have you been attacked by anyone, or verbally or anything like that?
I'm a very non-confrontational person. I really do believe I could sit with anyone and have a conversation. I always look at it as long as you're not screaming at me, it should be a conversation. It doesn't matter who, if you put anyone in this seat, it could be anybody. I have no problem talking to anybody and just coming from the standpoint of, I'm not going to change your mind, you're not going to change my mind, but maybe talking will educate each other. So in that aspect, I have faced people who have negative comments. They're usually just street people, screaming, and they probably scream at everybody. That's about the worst I've had. But I have had, I guess you would say, like an adversary, that I've spoken to, and it's difficult to have those conversations with people who they've got in their head, this is wrong, you're not going to change your mind, and that's all good and well. That's about all I've faced. But as my great aunt in our last conversation, she told me, maybe we can change the world one conversation at a time. So that's where I always come at it as, if you just talk to the person, and if they start screaming, well, then let them scream and make a buffoon of themselves. Yeah. So, yeah. What is one thing that you would tell LGBT youth?
Well, I think one of the things that I see, and we've got to be the advocates out there. I remember on Pride last year going down to Panera to grab, it was early morning, we were getting everything set up and everything run for Pride. And I ran down to Panera on Brown Street to get something to drink and quick meal while I was down there. And I had my Pride shirt on. And the young man behind the counter looked at me and he says, I have to work until 5, so I don't get, my shift isn't over until then, I can't get out there for it, but I'm glad you're there for all of us. And that's critical. We've got to be the advocates. We've got to be the ones out there making that 18 or 19-year-old young man know that it's okay and that he should be there and it's acceptable for him to be there. That's one of the biggest things, I think, as our youth see what's going on politically, they can be a little frightened, and we've got to make sure they are comfortable, that it's safe for them to know that, and to know that they've got support throughout all the generations. So
yeah. Wow.
Yeah, it's an interesting period, no doubt about it.
Oh yeah.
How about in your work environment? Is there acceptance and accountability? What is that like?
I was actually shocked. Or I shouldn't say shocked, but I guess you could. I was shocked at how easy it was. Now, a couple years ago, I worked at a vinyl shop in Miamisburg, and my grandma was like, I don't like you working in Miamisburg. Not only am I mixed race, but I'm gay, and that area is notorious for not being the most open. So when I was working down at the vinyl shop, my boss was super pro LGBT. Had no problem with it. We didn't talk about it a lot, and we didn't, when I ran her social media, it's not like we would mention it too much, just because we tried to stay away from that, getting too far into things, But now at the job that I work at currently, which is in the Oregon district, I feel really safe, because not only does my boss, he accepts me and has no problem with it, my coworker does as well, but the entire area, there's, everybody's starting to be more accepting in that area, and I've never felt an issue, and even with the customers. I've had several customers that, I don't know if I should be offended that people just automatically know, but they know, and it's never been an issue. I get the respect that I feel I deserve, which I think every person should have a basic amount of respect. So yeah, I'm happy with that.
I had an experience with where I worked at the time, and it was one of those terrifying experiences at first.
Oh goodness.
My boss called me up. She says, "Hey Jim, we got a couple things I need to discuss with you, one business and one personal." And we were talking, and I said, "Let's get the business thing done," and we went over, and the guy said, "Yeah, this is what's going on with it." And I said, "So what's the personal thing?" She said, "Well," She said, you know, her boss had seen me at a conference and noticed that I had a wedding band on. And I froze. I mean, I could feel the terror. And she said he wanted to know who you had gotten married to and who was the guy, what was the guy's name, and why hadn't the bank sent him a wedding gift? So that terrifying moment turned into one of those, I could breathe again, because all they were worried about was that they hadn't done the socially correct thing in sending a gift to a wedding. And it was terrifying when that question came up.
I bet, you know, to bounce off of that, I was for a period of time in professional wrestling. It was a personality within the professional wrestling area. And when I started training, my mom's like, don't tell them, because you know how wrestlers are. I mean, that was just the perception. Mm-hmm. And I was at training one night and they mentioned a drag queen. I thought, oh, here it goes. And they're like, yeah, we want to do a benefit show with the drag queens. And I just slid in there. I was like, we're okay with that? And they're like, yeah, wrestling is like, you know, this was 10 years ago. It was just starting to get more accepting. But mm-hmm. I was like, oh, by the way. And they're like, oh, we know. And I'm like, oh, okay. How's everybody know before me? Everybody knows. Do you think the political climate impacted your coming out at that time? Do you think it impacted you at all?
Absolutely. Again, during the time it was the AIDS epidemic, the AIDS crisis, and as I said before, it was just assumed that if you were gay, you were HIV positive. Mm-hmm. That was the assumption. But I also found, excuse me, I found some support, some allies during that time. Any number of those people, and it wasn't necessarily in the LGBTQ community. It was in the straight community who they said, hey, we're supportive. We'll do whatever we need to do. We want to help you make the progression that you need to make through this. So there was that aspect of it that was kind of terrifying a little bit at a time because of the times, but there was also the side of it that there were people banding together to support the Q plus community at that time. And that's an incredibly wonderful lesson to have had as I was going through that process.
Oh, wonderful.
Okay. Today, how would you, if you were talking to somebody who's 18 or 19 years old, how would you advise them in the process, especially again, back to the political environment that we're in?
That's a tough one. Because I have friends of all ages. I was heavily involved with Rainbow Alliance out at Wright State University for a while. And a lot of them, their families had no idea. And they knew if they told their families, they wouldn't have that support. Mm-hmm. And even currently, I have a friend via Instagram whose family is heavy into a certain political personality. And he's terrified to come out and lose his parents' love. So I'm always gently encouraging, you know, just be yourself. If you need to step away from the negativity and just be yourself, do it. But I feel weird giving that advice because my family, my friends, everybody around me was accepting, so I had no challenges. And I feel very, very privileged. And I've always recognized that I've had privileges that many LGBT people don't have. And I've always given that advice of, you know, just be yourself. And when you come out, you know, you'll feel a lot better. And I feel so bad giving that because I came out and I'm like, I'm fine. I've got a support base. Mm-hmm. And then I look at people, I'm like, how, they have no one. Mm-hmm. So I just always say, you know, be yourself and come out, but make sure that before you do that, you find a solid support base that if you feel like you're stumbling, they're going to pick you up. Because, you know, without my family, without my friends, I don't think I would have done it. And I can imagine how terrifying that would be. And then so many outside sources coming at you at the same time. So yeah, I would, you know, find a support base and then from there, be yourself and it'll feel so much better.
And I think in today's environment, I think the allies and advocates have rallied for mm-hmm. our communities. I really truly believe that they have come forth and said, we're not going to let this happen again. And,
Right.
and I see that every single day, and I see that with the people that I associate with, and I see that in various organizations that I'm involved in. They've rallied
Oh,
to
yeah.
support our communities.
Oh, yeah.
And that's critical. We need that support.
Yeah, they don't play anymore, which
No.
is good. You know, I always, in touching back on being mixed race, I feel it's highly important for straight people of color, and really any people of color, to come out, because it's so, how am I trying to say this? It's, maybe it's just because I am part black, but it's a huge problem right now with straight black men. They don't like to talk about that. Even my dad at one point did not like to talk about that. And now he's a huge advocate. I mean, I don't see him marching at Pride, but he's a former police officer. Now he works for the busing system, and he's always vigilant for injustices against LGBT people, because he's like, I can't let this happen. My son is gay. I need to start advocating. And then even to his friends, I know it's a difficult conversation at times, but I've seen him at certain points kind of standing up for me and telling his friend, like, this ain't gonna go on, And it's a hard thing to do, but yeah, I'm so glad that we have allies that are standing up. It's really important. I hope they realize how valued they are at this time. What do you wish your legacy to be within the LGBT community?
I would want it to be that I stood strong and I supported, and I encouraged people as they went through the process, and to make sure that they know it's a safe environment, to make sure that as we move forward, that 18-year-old kid at Panera knows that it's a safe environment for him to be out. And to me, I would hope that would be my legacy, is that I work toward making this a safe place for the entire Q+ community.
It's wonderful. I hope that we, the youth, me and those younger, I hope we make you feel appreciated, because you opened the doors and made it easier for us.
Well, I look at that and I think, we're doing this, I'm not doing this for me, I'm doing this for your generation. I'm doing it for the next generation, to make sure that they have those same opportunities in a very difficult time, that we all band together and make sure that everyone feels comfortable with where we're going. So,
That's wonderful. I'm so glad. I'm so glad that we have people like you that, I can't imagine back then the struggles that you faced. Mm-hmm. Because once again, I feel very privileged that I've not had any. Mm-hmm. I've had the unfortunate task of dealing with hard-headed people, but that's as bad as it's gotten, So I like I said, I just really hope that your generation and those older realize how, I can't speak for everyone, but me personally, that I appreciate what you've done, because even the smallest of things have changed and impacted our future. And, I don't know if I've done anything that will impact the future, hopefully. I feel like there's a lot of work to do, and I don't want to keep giving it to your generation to do.
Well, you're doing it now, because you're sitting and having this conversation, and that's a part of it. You're doing it right now. And you're doing it every time you come to a Pride event, or every time you go to a PFLAG event, or those types of things. You're giving that support. And I look at generationally. And Stonewall wasn't the first time, but Stonewall was what people remember. And that generation, and then the 80s generation of the AIDS crisis, and now our generation in the political, all of our generations in the political environment, we're there for each other. And that's critical. And that's what you do. The fact that you're sitting here is exactly what you're talking about. You're making it known that you are who you are, and no one has a right to take that away from you.
Oh, thank you.
It's critical.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I think one question that popped into my head as we were sitting here that I was almost hesitant to ask: have you faced any criticism within our own community?
There are times when the different organizations within our community don't always get along well, and we've got to overcome that. We've got to make it unifying. There are enough adversaries out there that we don't want to be our own adversaries. So yes, we have to make it a more unified community. Absolutely.
I agree with that.
And it's your generation and the next generation, that kid from Panera, they're going to continue to make that happen.
Yeah, I think it's really important. I like to think I can get along with anybody, and then you sit me in a room with 10 people, and I'll go home to my mom and be like, dang, there was somebody there that really got on my nerves. But it's hard when you've got so many different personalities, and there can be strong personalities within our community. I won't touch on it too much, but the reason why I asked is because, at times I would say I felt more supported by my straight allies. And at times I'm like, my friends in the gay community have been more supportive. It's a little balanced at times, but it, to me, has been sort of hard navigating my way through my own community, which, we all have our like subcultures within, there's the main LGBT plus umbrella, and then we've got our subcultures based on our many different, what makes us us, the new term that came of intersectionality, where all your, race and political, all that comes to crisscross. So it's good to hear that you haven't faced much. It sounds like, to be honest, we've almost led parallel lives. And we're, I can tell we're both very appreciative of those who have supported us and our backgrounds. I don't know what else to ask. Okay. Because I found so much.
I would just comment that I don't have an issue with strong personalities. I do have an issue with strong personalities who promote divisiveness. Oh, okay. If we have strong personalities in our community, that leads us forward. But if they're leading to divisiveness within our own communities, that's problematic, and we need to make sure that doesn't happen. We need to make sure everybody's entitled to their own opinions, but we need to work together to make sure that what we do in this community continues to march forward.
Oh yeah, I would say, I know that before we started rolling, I was saying that, I like to sit down like this and have conversations with people, even if it's someone that I know does not agree with me. I'm not coming at it to try and change their mind, just kind of give them another perspective. And a lot of times I've gotten a whole different perspective from people that I don't agree with. Not saying that I'm like, what you're doing is not okay, but it opens up my mind to see where they're coming from and maybe how to approach them and hope that their behavior doesn't continue a pattern.
If you understand what's behind their behavior, maybe you can work with them to make sure the behavior becomes all-inclusive. If you understand where they're coming from, then let's work through it and try to resolve those kinds of things.